And welcome to Mission Apollo, episode 5. Joined again by our fearless co-founder, Chris. Got a bit of a different look today. We're clearly doing this podcast remotely, and the reason for that is we got a special guest coming up later, which we'll introduce. But the main purpose and topic of this podcast, I guess, is going to be obviously the recent news in Toronto. I think everyone knows, or at least everyone in Toronto knows, and the surrounding area. The Toronto City Council recently voted to ban electric scooters, right? Or that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Again, that's painting a broad picture, and I guess that's a topic of conversation that we'll go nice and deep into today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm sure everyone knows, like, the city council recently voted just to uphold the current ban, I believe, and nothing has actually changed. And we also recently opened up a pop-up shop in Toronto. Is that right? You were there setting that up?
Yeah. So back to your thing on the ban. Like every new technology, government tries to set up a framework, tries to structure it, and then when it's handled a little bit differently, they just ban it in panic, because they need to find a proper framework that takes years to do. Look at France, look at all these countries that have done it successfully. France, Israel, who are probably 5 years ahead of us on this side. So Toronto allowed Bird and Lime, the rental free floating scooters, and then there was a few accidents and things like that because people were not wearing helmets and not following the parking procedure, and that's why the public panicked and Toronto banned it. But sorry, to your other question, so we still went forward. Canada is our home base. It's our most important scooter market. It's where we get all the incredible feedback to which we created the Phantom. It's where all our first and most loyal customers are, and that's why we always want to make sure we reward them by being present. And we were always operating under Montreal, and we opened a store last week in Toronto. You'll see pictures coming up soon, and it was incredible. The first 3 days, like, we'll be there till end of September. So anybody watching this and who's in Toronto and wants to go for a test drive, you can reserve a test drive online. And the goal is really just to have a presence to show what well-built, fun electric scooters are, and to come and meet the Polo team, see the brand, see our scooters, ask any questions based on safety and things like that. And it's really just to do that. And we'll be going to Vancouver in next week as well to set up that one. So it's a really exciting time. So excited to push this forward.
Nice. So I guess for anyone wondering, if you booked a test drive and you're concerned about this recent ban and maybe the laws, you don't have anything to worry about. Fingers crossed. I guess we'll know more about that soon. You can still definitely come and do your test drive and test out our scooters and maybe ask more questions. Our staff there will also be able to help you out and be able to give you more information. And
that's it. The test drive is in stacked markets, so on Bathurst and Front. It's on private property, so you're fine to test drive it. We give you helmets, we put speed restrictions, we walk through all the safety information. And I guess, again, the goal of this podcast is to really go through the nitty gritty of what's going on, what you're at risk with, what's the Polo doing, talking about the industry, and what we're going to move forward to. But like you said, we're taking action, of course.
Yeah, and we'll go more into what Apollo is doing as well to try and fight this and support our customers and kind of fight for this electric revolution that we're trying to start and push forward. What's the actual address for the Stack Market for those who don't know?
28 Bathurst Street in Toronto. It's on our website. So if you go to poloscooters.ca and scroll all the way down, you can book a test drive slot. It's by appointment only, and you'll be greeted by a lovely team, either Sam or Liam over there. And it's a really fun, especially with the beautiful weather coming out and the restrictions lifting a bit. It's a really nice experience to go and do that. And it was actually funny enough, our first, one of the first visits that we had yesterday was a police officer that walked by and was like, "These look amazing. These look so sick." And we're very transparent with him. We're like, look at what the city did and stuff. And he's like, he didn't hear any news about enforceability, and he was like, honestly, if you ride it safely, you'll be completely fine. And he then got changed. He had to take off his uniform because he probably knew we were going to take a photo of it, and he was like, I don't want to be on the media and I don't want to be fired. But
probably a good idea.
But they're fair sports, they have to do their job. But so that's in Bathurst. And in Vancouver, it's going to be in Gastown, and it's on Water Street, 28 Water Street, I think. But we'll share that with you guys after as well.
Cool. Yeah, and I guess what the officer said kind of lines up with what we've been advising customers as well. Like, obviously, what we give out is not legal advice, but speaking just from personal experience, and we were in Toronto recently filming and recording us riding the scooters around too. As long as you're wearing a helmet, riding safely, respecting the laws, and not driving like a speed demon, maybe you should be fine.
Yeah. And you even got featured on the CTV, didn't you, Sean?
Yes, I don't actually remember giving out my permission to use our image. But yeah, me and Randy, our photographer, were captured riding around, trying to find some good spots for footage and photos. Good thing while we were wearing our helmets and riding safely, of course.
Yeah, and again, we'll go more into details. I guess Aaron will be joining us in a few minutes, who is a real professional on all this, and he knows every single nitty-gritty detail. But again, it's a new technology. I don't understand why it's so against scooters and one wheels, which look much more dangerous, and like unicycles and all this type of stuff like EUCs. I don't know if they're parts of this, to be honest, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's really just against scooters, which puts a lot of question marks. But
I'd be curious to know as well, like the rules around electric bikes, because you'd think electric bikes, scooters, pretty
electric bikes are fully allowed. It's regulated to 32 kilometers an hour. No sidewalks, just bike roads, so they're completely fine. Which again, that this is a topic of discussion, right? Like, why are electric bikes, which are much more expensive, and scooters are much more accessible to people? The amount of people I see using electric scooters for Uber Eats and food delivery, and actually using it as a job, mode of transportation, because it's sustainable, it's cheap, relative to electric bike and a car, of course, and it's so fun, right? It's like, unfortunately, a few people would ruin it for the rest of us, by going too fast or by being dangerous or putting others in danger. But it'll be, it's like everywhere. It's a big move that we need to do in terms of pushing the government and just showing them that we're doing our due diligence to make sure everyone's safe and everything, and we'll do it. Of course, that's what we're setting up, and we'll talk more with Evan about that. But that's not too worried.
Yeah, with any new technology, especially anything that moves you forward, there's always a little bit of fear surrounding it. And I'm sure you go back to the car or the train, there's people concerned about that too, and how fast you can go.
It's like electric cars, right? The amounts of accidents on a highway every day. I don't know. You have hundreds and thousands, and you never hear it. You hear Tesla has a crash on the highway. It's a front page of the news, right? It's like when there's new technology, it's always going to be publicized much more, and I understand the government, but it's a shame. Calgary opened up electric scooters again. BC opened up electric scooters, which is unheard of, because BC is more delayed on that process, like Uber. And then Toronto just quickly went the wrong way. Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, maybe to talk about this a little bit more, we have our special guest, Aaron Binder, I believe his name is, and he should be joining us any second. There he is.
Hey, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Welcome. Yeah, so do you want to just introduce yourself first? Maybe what's your role and title, and maybe your expertise on the recent ban and laws in Toronto?
Yeah, I'm Aaron Binder, as you mentioned. I'm the Chief Experience Officer of Segway Ontario, and we've been selling micromobility devices since 2004. So I think we're actually one of the longest running businesses in North America that's been selling. We started with Segways, which completely flopped about a year later, but we quickly pivoted to opening a tour operation, and that's been quite successful for us until about March 2020. And as you can both attest to, since then we've just seen an explosion of demand for e-scooters and other micromobility devices as people want to get outside, into the fresh air, take care of their mental health, all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at relaunching our tour operation when we legally can, in probably July. But we've definitely seen a lot of demand for scooters. I heard you mentioning one wheels. Everyone asks us about those. And I think about a third of the people that try them end up buying them. The other 2/3 are like, no, not for me. But they are a lot of fun. So
cool. And then I guess,
nice.
Yeah, cool. And I guess today, just like the main conversation here is just to educate everyone about what's going on. And I was telling the team that you're really the best person because you've gone into this in so much detail and you know everything about it and like the nitty gritty details. And it would be great to hear a bit more about like how this all started. If you can share a bit, and then we can walk into like I know you had a few ideas of how we're going to counter to it, and I know there's like insurance ideas and you know how long time frame, and basically at the end of this we're just going to talk about what we should recommend people to do and what steps Apollo is taking. But if you can start off with like what happened, like what was the nitty gritty, like the tipping point for this regulation?
Well, funnily enough, in March, I actually stepped down from running a not-for-profit organization in Toronto that was completely intertwined with municipal level politics. And I left and I was like, all right, I'm taking the next couple of years off from this. And clearly I couldn't. So, you know, that's my background. I've been quite active in, at all three levels of politics for the last half decade. And this has been completely personal. Clearly, when you bring your business into the political atmosphere, I think it requires a pretty deft touch, and you really need to be aware of what's happening. So, you know, my background allows me to kind of understand this more than a lot of people can. And you know, I don't blame them for not. It's a lot of time invested into something that is incredibly frustrating. So, my background allows me to kind of understand what's going on at City Hall. And I think, Chris, you and I met initially probably around the time that the City of Toronto's Infrastructure Committee was meeting in late April to basically support or not support whether or not they would give the stamp of approval to e-scooters in Toronto.
So was there any reason why
there was
sorry, Aaron.
a dual? Go ahead.
Some connection issues here.
Yeah. Sorry, can you? Yeah, okay, I think that's better. Sorry, and like, what was this like? Was it a sudden reason of why this like they had to just stamp of approval or not? Like, did anything come up? Like, what caused them to actually have this meeting and? So
you will know, but most people won't know that over the last 2 years in Toronto, the city has been evaluating e-scooters, and there have been a lot of companies that have basically been saying like these are the best thing ever, and it's been a lot of the scooter share companies like Lime and Bird, and a lot of their arguments are pretty correct. You know, you look at their stats and like, yeah, it increases mobility for people. It gets people out of cars. Those stats are correct. These devices actually do that. Where they may have gone a little overboard from the scooter share side of things is they certainly got too aggressive, and we're saying like, let's deploy 10,000 of these, let's drop them everywhere across the city. And we now know that cities that have done that, most of them have pulled back and said, okay, we need to reevaluate how this all rolled out. So the infrastructure committee and city councilors were basically saying like, well, maybe we don't need to do this yet. Maybe we can wait a couple more years until these other cities figure this out on the scooter share side. You know, my personal opinion is it's just a matter of time before a scooter share program rolls out in Toronto. Realistically, I think it's 3 to 5 years away in Toronto. Wow. The unfortunate casualty of this infrastructure committee and city council private in the city now, and now that's always been the case. This is not new. It's always been illegal to ride an e-scooter in Toronto. But what the city council decision did was reinforce the fact that this is illegal. And I think that's a big distinction to make. So everyone that's been riding, the thousands and thousands of riders, you've already been doing it illegally. Nothing has changed. So I want to be clear on that.
And so, Aaron, out of these thousands and thousands of riders, do you know of anybody who's received a ticket from a police or like any? Because there's a difference between, you know, legality and enforceability, right? So like legality is okay and can be legal, but enforceability is like, you know, are they actually giving a ticket if you're just riding a scooter and being safe and careful?
Yeah. So in this staff report that was put forward to City Council, it basically said that there is the capability for enforcement. So Toronto Police have kind of said the same thing. What that means is you can be stopped, you can be ticketed, but I haven't heard of anyone that this has happened to. What I have heard is that if the police catch somebody riding on a sidewalk, they might ticket that, which is pretty reasonable downtown. If you're blasting around 30 kilometers an hour in between pedestrians, probably don't do that. The same goes for cyclists, e-bike riders, cars, for example, who have a history of jumping curbs as well. This is just reasonable. I think everyone across the board agrees with this. The one thing I want to mention before we move on from this, though, is that our service department, and I'm sure you've got some of these similar stories, has basically told us, like, the people riding on sidewalks, like, most of them just don't know they're not supposed to, because they've bought their device from Amazon or Best Buy or somewhere that doesn't give them any kind of training or safety guidelines. So what that means is they're riding there, they come in for service from us, and we're asking them, listen, how is it riding? They're like, oh, I'm on the sidewalk. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And it's the first they hear of this. So we can't enforce this. The city has said this, but what we can do is educate people. And I think that should be the direction that the city is going in, is education instead of enforcement.
Yeah. And then I guess if you look at what's interesting as well in Canada, we were just talking about this before you jumped on, Aaron, is Canada as a whole, like Vancouver legalized it very recently as well. They're trying to test pilots. Calgary is one of the cities that they launched it, I think, 2 years ago or last year, and they saw enormous amounts of the positive sides of it, the increase in mobility and the amount of people using it in the trips, and they took that and they're bringing it back this year. But what they're doing is literally they're saying, like, to make it very, very clear, you ride on the sidewalk, it's a $1,500 fine. And I like that, because it's sort of, it makes people understand, okay, you should not ride on sidewalk, and now it's publicized media, and it's like, it's really, really the roles of, like you said, retailers and Lime and Bird especially, to say, like, when you're riding a scooter, you're not allowed riding on sidewalks. Like, they're still giving this freedom to people to use scooters. They're not saying it's illegal. It's just, you'll get fined if you do that. Like, if you drive a car and you ride through a red light, you're going to get fined, right? Like, there has to be some sort of legal infrastructure to it. And I guess one of the things that lots of customers and people are asking us is, like, why is it illegal? Why are they banning it? It's like, is there any stats? I don't know if you know, but I know in Montreal, for example, they bought Bad and Lime here, and then last year they stopped it straight away, because the two main reasons were that it was safety. People were not wearing helmets. Well, like, again, it's micromobility, right? Like, rental scooters, you're walking and you take a scooter because it's practical, but of course you're not going to have a helmet in your back pocket. So it's a bit contradictory. And then the second one was designated parking, or it's like parking pollution, they would call it, where you would put scooters everywhere on the streets and sidewalks and all. And Montreal even had designated parking zones, but on the app of Lime and Bud, you could just park it anywhere, right? So, like, it's also the responsibility of these companies, but, like, what was the trigger for Toronto? Do you know? Is it the same base?
There were three main reasons that the city decided to go with a ban instead of an education campaign. The first, and I think the biggest one for them, was insurance. The city of Toronto is notoriously conservative when it comes to any type of new initiative. And this wasn't really unexpected, but they basically want to see insurance infrastructure in place before they'll go ahead with legalization. The second was enforcement. And this is the paradox to me. It's like they at the same time they said they can't enforce this, they basically said we need to enforce this. So it's a weird one. I'm not going to get into that. But the third thing was they had this huge reaction from a lot of disability advocates who basically said, like, the scooter share programs in other cities, we're talking to our friends there, blind people are tripping all over the scooters, which is true. Like, this is not a criticism of some of the arguments they brought up. In fact, I think all of us are supportive of a number of the things that were brought up by the disability advocates. If you park this on a sidewalk, you can't hear it. So people do trip over them. And there are some other concerns there as well. As they're traveling along, there's no road noise, or I should say there's minimal road noise compared to even a bicycle. So there are some reasonable concerns there, but these are easy to overcome. And, I don't think they're reasonable enough to criminalize the thousands and thousands of people that are already on city streets. And, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me from the city council decision that was disappointing was a particular motion that was brought forward to recommend that the police increase enforcement on existing riders. The unfortunate side effect of this is that we looked at our sales data, and we noticed a couple of interesting things. The first is that a fairly large percentage of our customers that are buying scooters are buying them to commute to and from work. And they're doing this because they live in areas that are underserviced by public transportation. Either they buses or subways don't show up on time, or they show up every hour. And what we've been told from a number of our customers is that these devices, these e-scooters, are allowing them to just show up to work on time. Like, for some of us, that might not seem like a big thing, but when you're and you show up, that's a big thing in a lot of these work environments. So that has actually shown us that this is improving the work-life balance for people. They're getting to work faster than they could on the TTC or other public transportation in the GTA. And the other thing that kind of struck me as odd about increasing the enforcement of this is, like, most of the people buying these to commute to work, Chris, don't look like the two of us. They're new Canadians, they're children of immigrants, and they're brown people, they're black people, they're Asian people. Traditionally, folks that are the first to get pointed at by law enforcement and pulled over on any kind of transportation. So you're essentially like reinforcing this over-the-top potential police response. And like I've spoken with staff sergeant and a couple of officers, and they've said, no, we're not going to do this. But the fact that they could is, I think, really damaging.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you raise a very good point. Like, again, the whole point of micromobility is to connect the last mile solution, right? It's like not having more cars in the city and not having more congestion and more limited parking infrastructure. And again, like, one of the things that we see a lot with our customers is so many people buy this to use it for Uber delivery, like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and it's so much more efficient. Like, even the police in Montreal, we had a conversation with them, and they wanted to sort of potentially buy a fleet of 500 for the parking tickets and stuff, because I said it's so inefficient that someone drives in the car, drives 100 meters, gets out, does something, and then they love the idea of having that as a parking solution. I think it's so efficient. And then the ban in Montreal came, and they said, yeah, we're gonna have to hold off because, again, we just put that statement out. So it's like, they're going backwards, right? It's going backwards in a way, and like, I know it's probably going to take a bit of time for it to go forwards in that way, but I'm glad at least that we also talked to the police, and they're like, we're not going to enforce it if you're respecting the rules of the road. You're nothing different than an electric bike. Just be very careful with it. But so yeah, just quickly before we move on this, in terms of you talked about insurance, you talked about you're doing a lot of work on the back end of it. Can you share a bit of like what you're working on and what the community driving aspect of it is? And even that insurance, is there any touch base on that insurance? Do you think any timelines, any work you guys are doing that you want to share with the channel?
Yeah, so I'll just mention there's two projects that are currently going on in the background. One of them is going to be released next week, and it's going to be called Scoot Safe Toronto. Nice. And this is a grassroots organization that's being pulled together just by regular riders that really like doing this. And they're going to be launching the website, scootsafetoronto.com. And you can go sign a petition there. It'll go to Mayor Tory. It'll go to your councillor. And that's going to be one way for just regular people to get involved and advocate for this. The other thing that we're launching, and by we, I mean me and a few other retailers, Chris, I think you're going to get involved in this as well, is called the Canadian Micromobility Alliance. And this is an industry group. There isn't any industry representation in Canada yet. So we're going to be looking at things like developing safety standards. I know most scooters already come with a bell and a front light and a rear light, but what about speed? What about maximum weight? What about all these other things? How can we get this defined by Transport Canada as a safe vehicle so that it's not like a piecemeal piece of legislation from province to province or municipality to municipality, so that each one of these governments at all three levels can point at Transport Canada and say, this is the minimum requirement necessary to ride one of these devices anywhere in Canada. So that's what we're going to move toward. It's going to take a couple of years, but we will get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's what shocks me, though. It's like these governments and all, they haven't reached out to the biggest retailers. They haven't reached out to us. Like, that's the first logical step you would do, right? The guys who actually produce, like, we produce our scooters, like, we have control over anything. We've added, exactly like you said, we've added bells, front lights, back lights, like stronger folding, like everything to sort of limit or to add any safety devices. And it's shocking that they just wouldn't reach out and say, hey, like, we need you guys to do this, or like, what's your advice on this, or here's a user data. Like, it's just backwards. They just ban it.
Yeah. Well, the two good things that are coming out of this, these two groups is, first of all, there was an insurance company that approached us to generate rider data. So hopefully we can get 500 to 600 riders in Toronto that are generating data over the next few months, and we'll be collecting data. And you know what it's probably going to say is that 99.9% of trips are incredibly safe. So that's one good thing that's coming out of this. The other good thing is that we do actually have a number of these other groups that are willing to work with us already. And I was speaking with Cycle Toronto the other day, and basically their director said, like, we wish bicycles already came with what scooters already do. Front light, rear light, and bell. Those are built into almost every scooter now. Mm-hmm. She was saying, like, I wish bicycle manufacturers would just send these from the factory as well, because it would make everyone's lives a lot safer. So we've already won a couple of key things there. And I think as this moves forward over the next 6 months, 12 months, the city will start looking at this a little differently now that a lot of the scooter share companies have kind of exited the conversation. Now, Chris, they're going to start paying attention to companies like ours that are selling the devices that are actually being used on the city streets.
Excellent. Yeah. And I think that's very exciting. And they're going to see Calgary, they're going to see all these other places in the world that have adopted this model, and it's actually helping everybody in terms of it, and they're going to have to go back at some point. But I mean, if anybody listening to this channel, I think the only thing that people would be sensitive of when they hear about like this ride sharing data is just like, I guess, confidentiality and data sharing and stuff. So I mean, I assume the data would be like kept only for the sole purpose of like, government proof and stuff like that. There'll be nothing behind this data sold to other companies and all, right?
Yeah, that is correct. And I've spoken with that particular insurance company, and they don't have access to the data. So it's like, it's randomized even for them.
Cool. So, just I know in Europe, they were very, very tight with Segway and Ninebots, and also, so it's probably going to happen here as well. And that's what the goal is, to show riding patterns, and hopefully more people on scooters, especially in the Toronto area, would be like for this movement, and we'll join along. We would definitely join along as well. And personally, I don't know, we'll let our customers decide if they want to, but cool. Evan, I think that's it on our side. Thank you so much for coming in. Is there any last things you want to say, or anything else you want to bring to attention?
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing, is that I'm sure your data indicates this as well, but every scooter trip taken, it has the impact of taking cars off the street. It improves congestion, like reduces congestion. You all know the benefits of this. So we don't really need to repeat those, but apparently we do to the city of Toronto. Do it, and let's do it in a good way, and let's create those good outcomes for all of our customers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like Stats Canada was something like 60 to 70% of people in major cities in Canada use their cars for less than 5 kilometers every day. Like, get a scooter. You're gonna have so much more fun. You're gonna be much more energized. You're not gonna sit in traffic. You're not gonna have to pay for insurance. You're not gonna have to pay for parking. Like, it's a and we have there's a scooter for every need. So anyway, it's gonna move there.
Look how happy we all are.
I know. Cool, Aaron. Thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Cool.
All right. That was a really good conversation. I think we might have had some technical difficulties and some delays there, but I guess to summarize what he was saying is like most of the pain points seem to be from the scooter sharing programs, which cities have done and then kind of backed out of pretty quickly. Obviously, people leaving the scooters everywhere. Here in Montreal is quite famous. Like, scooters were found in the canals and alleyways, garbage cans, etc. And safety concerns as well, which is fair, right?
But what's annoying is, again, the government's painting privately owned scooters and rental scooters under the same brush, which is completely different, right? Which again, the people who purchase electric scooters and it's their private use, treat it with much more care. They get helmets, they get safety gear, they're educated. For rentals, it's like anyone can use it, and that's what is painting this bad image for us. It's always on the front page of the news. It's always everywhere. So I wish that they need to differentiate that much more.
Yeah, and I mean it's fair to have safety concerns as well, and I mean most of these arguments make sense. I think what was the Global News article that was recently released, the one that we were featured in as well. I think it was like a city councilor or something who was interviewed, and he was talking about how it's just not the time to think about this. And again, that argument makes sense. That there's more important things going on in the world right now. But again, does it really need to be specifically banned or illegal, right?
And that's it. We were having conversations with Montreal to potentially launch a pilot program for privatized scooters. So like much more accountability and everything else. And then COVID hit. So right, their budgets get slashed and their priorities change, which is normal. And that's why that article, the guy was saying like this is the worst time for scooters. Unfortunately, he was like, I feel sorry for scooter companies because we just don't have the time to focus on it. So we're just gonna put it aside and we're gonna get back to it. But I guess what we can talk about, Sean, is also like what you should be wearing and what you should be doing with scooters, and how Polo is addressing it.
Because what Aaron was saying too, like from personal experience, from all of our personal experience, as long as you're a responsible rider and wearing the proper safety gear, you shouldn't have any issues. And I mean, even from our own conversations with police officers and that kind of confirms that.
Exactly. And then unfortunately, again, it's like if you're riding it respectfully and doing your own thing, you most of the chances you will be fine. There is a very, very odd chance that a policeman's having a bad day and just wants to annoy you, right? They have, and that's why it's important to be transparent. Like they have the possibility to do it if they want. So,
don't
we're
give
trying
them
to
any reason to talk to you.
Yeah, and again, we're very transparent with we have blogs, we have YouTube videos, and everything saying that scooters, are legal on private property, and if you're using it on public property, just be careful, and this is your own risk. But I hope people realize that we are really, really pushing the governments, with customers, and everything to make sure that we are moving towards the right direction. We're not just sitting here and doing nothing about it.
Yeah. Can we maybe go into a little bit more about what exactly we are doing? I think Aaron kind of touched on that too. You guys are going to be working together a little bit, and we're kind of putting together a advocacy group and
so
educating the public and the government.
We have over it's a group of 30, retailers, customers, just very passionate people who are all pushing towards it's educating the people who have put this ban in place. So we're watching the thing, and it was like a board of 25 people who had to choose this vote to ban it or not. All 25 of them voted against it. And then one of the questions from the public was, can you raise your hand if any of you have actually ever tried an electric scooter? And not one person did it, right? They were all over 50 years old. They never tried a scooter. So imagine voting on something you haven't even tried. So, you see it, it's scary sometimes, but if you try it, you realize how easy it is. Our first customer was 72 years old. It's a very solid machine. And I think Aaron touched on a very good point, is that manufacturers and retailers have to be much more accountable as well, right? Like all our scooters come with bells, with horns or bells, front lights, back lights, solid brakes, and we're responsible. It's like a great incentive warranty to that.
Yeah, and we always tell our customers, wear a helmet, wear your full safety gear. Like it's not even just for others, but for yourself as well. I mean, if you fall, crash something, you want to be fully protected.
Exactly. And I think that education piece is so important. What else we're doing? I mean, we're going to potentially launch safety courses, training courses. So if you get a new scooter, you can book a half an hour, safety course with us at Stackdoor here in Montreal. Nice. We'll be rolling that out as well. And just putting a lot more content to educate people on what to do and what not to do. Yeah. That's the main thing, right? It's like, again, sidewalk. Because again, lots of people don't understand, like, don't wear earphones while driving, don't text and drive, don't ride on sidewalks, don't carry a passenger. Like all of these things you would assume are a bit logical, but I understand like when you don't realize there's like regulation based, you're not sure. Our job right now is to educate and show like these things as much as possible. Like that's what we're doing for the next few months for sure.
These are things you shouldn't even be doing while you're driving a car or riding your bicycle. It's the same thing for a scooter.
Exactly.
I think another misconception too, and I was reading in some of the communications for the city council, whatever, they were talking about how there's corporate lobbyists trying to push the government into allowing the scooters, and I think that's a big misconception. because that's definitely not our intent and what we're doing here. I think there's very clear distinction between lobbying and trying to educate.
And the government's like, in a lot of the things that he's saying, like Aaron said, like they are very right. Like, of course, like for the disabilities group, if you have a scooter riding at 65 kilometers an hour, and a blind person's walking on the street, of course he's going to be petrified. Like, I completely understand it, but by banning it, that's taking the wrong approach. It's sort of saying, how can we put a framework and an infrastructure for all of us to work together, and make this work? So, I mean, that's again what we'll be working on.
Just like a band-aid. Like they don't really know what to do with it right now, so they've just kind of banned it in the meantime, and they'll like push it down the road to try and figure it out later.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what can we do moving forward, and what can we advise all of our customers, future riders? Like, what's the best way to maybe avoid getting into any trouble? Obviously, not legal advice what we're giving out, but what our best suggestions are.
Again, first is safety gear priority. Always wear helmets. Always make sure your scooter, regardless of where you bought it, has good lights. It has a horn, a bell, so you can signal if you're ever like close to someone else. Or never ride on a sidewalk. Really, safety is super important, not just for yourself, but for other people around you, pedestrians, cyclists, cars. You know, like motorcycles, for example. I come from Mauritius, and motorcycles, there's no legality of you can drive through cars at full speed. You can do whatever you want. In Canada, they're much more strict, which is good. Like if you're the same, you're the same as a car, right? You're not allowed going through cars, and like you must stay behind in traffic. You can't just zip to the front. Like same thing goes with scooters. Like you're not special. I'm sorry. Like you need to respect the rules like everyone else. Don't ride on sidewalks. Don't go through red lights. Respect the look. Like it's I really hope that all customers and all riders realize that again, if we all do a good effort in the next 2 years to respect the rules of the road, don't go over the speed limit, don't go over like 32 kilometers an hour. Like you shouldn't be doing that in the city anyway. The governments and all will see this, and they'll see how much use people are using this for work, for the economy in general. And hopefully one of these panelists will actually try a scooter and absolutely love it and buy one, right? Like we'll send 25 of them to them, and I would love to see them on it, right? That'll be I guarantee you the smiles on their faces will come up to it's like everyone else who tries a scooter.
Yeah, and that's a good point you brought up too. Like we need to kind of treat them as cars still. Like it's a car alternative, but you're still on the road with other cars. And same thing on a motorcycle, on a bicycle, scooter, whatever. You're sharing the road with much bigger vehicles, and you need to give them the space, because in a contest between you and a car, there's no winners.
Yeah, and I think the future is going to be insurance, like Aaron said. Like cars have insurance, scooters may need to have insurance. Like if you're riding full speed and you hit someone, these are very expensive bills that the government sometimes has to pay, right? Like it's something like paying. I know in Spain there's an insurance program. It's like $4 a month for scooter riders, and it protects against liability. It protects against theft. If that's what it takes to get the government on board, like sure, no problem, we'll do that. Other things, like we've written to the government and we're like, we can give free helmets with every scooter, we can give a free course, and we can give free certifications and make sure we do our job, but they just don't want to hear it. It's just not the time because of COVID, unfortunately. It's
hard to argue with that part.
But again, we're doing our job. Like we're doing as much as we can. The customer service team is always pushing that as much as possible in terms of rules and regulation. It is just tough when you have countries like the US that just don't have regulation in most states. So I don't want them to set the example for Canada and things like that, where it's a bit more strange. But I'm confident. Again, scooters are the future. It's so practical, so sustainable, convenient. It's it's a good, affordable solution for lots of people, and it's fun, and it's even more practical than a bike. So like, there's no way of stopping this. It's impossible. It's a movement, and it makes sense.
I think the benefits are impossible to ignore, and kind of the only challenge moving forward will be how best to implement it with everybody. How can we try and keep everybody safe, both like the users of the scooters and everyone around them? Maybe some sort of regulations on them will make sense, but there needs to be a kind of discourse and discussion about that too, and what
and
exactly
there's countries. Sorry,
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's like countries like the Philippines that. They bought like a fleet of 200 very, very high powerful scooters for their police force to catch people on scooters. Like, it's more effective than a bicycle. Like you see a police on a bicycle, like what? No offense, but what's he gonna do, right? Like how fast can he go? But on a scooter that can go up to 70 kilometers an hour, and that the speed can only be for that policeman, whatever, and consumers can still have a speed limiter. I just think there's much more open-minded ways of thinking about it, and it's just something that's not on the priority list for the government. So, I mean, to sum it up, if you're riding a scooter in Toronto, please wear a helmet, be careful, respect the rules of the road. You shouldn't have any issues. Like, I've been riding for 4 years in Montreal, which is not technically legal either. As long as you're being respectful, you like a bicycle, you won't get into trouble. But if you go at 65 kilometers an hour, doing backflips on the sidewalk, you deserve a ticket. I'm sorry. Like,
riding in front of streetcars too. Yeah, it's not a good time.
I just want to flip this to customers, right? Like, if there's, or like anybody watching this, if there's anything you want to see from us at a photo, like if there's any more training courses, if there's any more resources that we can share, like, we'd love to. Please give us your feedback, and we'd love to work with you guys on this one. We really need the community as a whole. Just us or just one rider is not going to help. We need to be all together for this movement.
Absolutely. Yeah, that all makes sense. And I guess if anyone outside of Toronto is watching this as well, like, we always recommend checking your local bylaws and regulations. And again, same thing with Toronto. Like, maybe it's technically illegal there, but how enforceable is it? And this is something to be aware of as well. General rule we have found: as long as you're wearing safety gear, responsible, respectful, you shouldn't have any problems. But we always recommend doing your research first.
And ask us if you're not sure. Just jump on our live chats 9 to 5 every day, and just ask us to be sure before even purchasing a scooter. Because I know lots of people purchase and then realize it's too late. It's really important to do your research before and just make sure your comfort zone matches the laws, because that's the last thing we want to do. We want to make sure you are educated and you know what you're getting yourself into. Exactly.
All right. Well, I think this is a pretty good place to end the episode. Thanks for joining me again, Chris. Anything else you want to drop before we go?
No, thanks so much for having me, Sean. And again, if anyone watching this has any ideas or has any questions, please reach out to us. Like I said, we just opened a place in Stacked to again test drive scooters to show more safety, to help educate people on what good quality scooters with the right safety resources on it can do. We're also coming to Vancouver in 2 weeks, so if anybody watching this is from there, like, we'd love to see you at the store, even if it's just to say hello. I think the community is always amazing on these initiatives. I know Toronto, they had a march, or it wasn't a protest in any way. It was like a scooter, like legalized scooters sort of thing 2 weekends ago, where there was like 50 people, and they were all respecting the rules. They were all and it was nice to see, and that's a power of a community. I really love that. So
I don't know if you can call it a march
in.
if you're on the scooters, but
I know it's like a roll.
Like a group scooter or something.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks everyone for watching. Vancouver, we're coming for you soon. And if you guys have any suggestions, comments, more questions, reach out to us. We're always happy to help, and we take all feedback very seriously.
Or even future, if you guys want to see something on our Mission Apollo podcast and anything specific, we love hearing from you. So please do share.
All right. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks guys. Cheers.